out of anger and pain, she invoked the elements of the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars. She cursed Ugochukwu and Okoro. The chief looked at him pitiful and said, "Obinna, my son, I am afraid to unveil this to you. You are under a curse, a very old and a powerful curse, which had existed for years. A curse that had been passed down from generation to generations in your family. A curse that prevented you from having children." Once upon a time, there was a man called Obinna. He had a beautiful wife called NNEKa. They struggled to conceive. He married the second wife called Ada. He was a wealthy and respected man in his village. He loved them equally. He also had a large farm, a big house, and many cattle. He was happy and contented with his life, except for one thing: he had no children. Obinna had tried everything to have a child with his wives, all to no avail. He had consulted many doctors, priests, and herbalists. He had prayed, fasted, and made sacrifices. He had even visited the famous witch doctor in the city, who had given him a powerful potion to drink, but nothing worked. Obinna began to wonder if he was cursed. He wondered if he had offended the gods, or his ancestors, or someone else is somewhere manipulating his family. He wondered if someone had cast a spell on him, or his wife, or both. He wondered if there was any hope for him to have a child, or if he would die without an heir. Obinna became traumatized. His wife NNEKa and Ada cried almost every day, as people in the village always mocked them for being barren. The pain was too much. Then one day, he decided to visit the oldest and wisest man in his village, called Chief Okafor. He hoped that Chief Okafor would have some advice or insights for him. He greeted Chief Okafor respectfully and told him his problem. The chief listened to him attentively and nodded his head, and he said, "Obinna, my son, I have known you since you were a boy. You are a good man, a hardworking man, a generous man. You have done nothing to deserve this misfortune happening to you. But I also know that there are forces beyond our control, forces that can affect our lives in mysterious ways. Sometimes these forces are seen, and sometimes they are unseen. Sometimes they are natural, and sometimes they are supernatural. Sometimes they are visible, and sometimes they are invisible. You see, Obinna, there is more to this world than meets the eyes." Obinna felt a chill run down his spine. He asked, "What do you mean by this, Chief? What are you trying to tell me? Please talk to me," Obinna asked Chief Okafor. The chief looked at him pitiful and said, "Obinna, my son, I am afraid to unveil this to you. You are under a curse, a very old and a powerful curse, which had existed for years. A curse that had been passed down from generation to generations in your family. A curse that prevented you from having children." Obinna grasped. He said, "A curse? In my family? How? Why? Who?" The chief sighed and said to him, "It is a long story, but I will tell you a story that dates back to the time of your great-grandfather called Ugochukwu. He was the first in your family to suffer from this curse. He was the one who brought it upon himself and his descendants. He was the one who made a deal with the devil," Chief Okafor said to Obinna. Obinna felt his blood run cold. He said, "A deal with the devil? What kind of deal is that? What did he do, Chief? Please tell me." The chief said to him, "He did something terrible, Obinna, something unforgivable, something that cost him his soul and his lineage. Your father killed his own brother. He killed his own brother for a woman." Obinna was shocked on hearing this. He said, He killed his own brother for a woman. What woman and who was she? Obinna asked Chief, looking anxious. The chief said, she was the most beautiful woman in the land. Obinna, she was the daughter of the king, the princess, the jewel of the kingdom. She was Ngozi, the one they called the star of the morning. She was the woman that every man desired, but only one man could have her. She was the woman that Ugochukwu loved, but could not have her. She was the woman that your father's brother Chukwuma had. She was the woman that Ugochukwu killed his brother for, but never got her. She loved Chukwuma. Out of jealousy, your father Ugochukwu murdered his brother Chukwuma. She was the woman that cursed him and his descendants. Obinna, she was the woman that cursed you. Chief Okafor said this to Obinna. Obinna wept bitterly. He was shattered and devastated. He asked what could be done to nullify this curse. The chief responded, nothing. Absolutely nothing, because this tragic evil was not only committed by your father, he accomplished it with the help of Chukwuma's friend. This is what happened in the forest, Obinna. Ugochukwu betrayed and murdered his brother, which brought a curse upon him and your family. The same curse is affecting your wives. Obinna, my son, this is the truth of what happened. You must listen attentively. Years ago, your late father had 3 wives. The first wife, the second, and your late mom, the third wife. Ugochukwu and Chukwuma were brothers from the first wife, but they were different in characters. Ugochukwu was the eldest, the strongest, the dull and a coward. He was also a farmer. He was ignored and despised by everyone in the village due to his mannerless attitude. But his brother Chukwuma was the smartest, the bravest, and he was a warrior, a hunter, a leader. He was admired and respected by everyone in the village. Ugochukwu and Chukwuma had only one thing in common. They both loved the princess Ngozi. She was the daughter of the king, the ruler of the land. She was the most beautiful woman anyone has ever seen. She had a face like the moon, eyes like the stars, hair like the night, and a smile like the sun. She had a voice like a song, a laugh like a bell, a heart like a flower, and a soul like a fire. She was the star of the morning. Ugochukwu and Chukwuma both wanted to marry Ngozi, but only one of them could. The king had announced that he would give his daughter's hand in marriage to the man that could prove himself worthy of her. He had set series of challenges for the suitors. Each challenge was difficult than the last. The first challenge was to climb the highest mountain in the land and bring back a feather from the eagle's nest. The second challenge was to swim across the widest river in the land and bring back a pearl from the oyster shell. The third challenge was to enter the darkest forest in the land and bring back a tooth from the lion's mouth. Many men tried to win Ngozi's hand, but none of them succeeded. Some of them failed all the challenges. Ugochukwu and Chukwuma had made attempts to complete the challenge and was the only one left. They had completed the first 2 challenges with ease, and one challenge was left for them. Chukwuma, the younger, was confident that he would complete the third challenge and win Ngozi's heart. He loved Ngozi with all his heart. He knew that she loved him too. He had seen the way she looked at him, the way she smiled at him, the way she spoke to him, and he was sure that he was his, like they loved themselves so much. Ugochukwu the eldest had also completed the first 2 challenges, but with great difficulties. He had not loved Ngozi with all his heart, but he wanted her with all his greed. He wanted the princess because of the throne and her father's wealth. On the day of the third challenge, Ugochukwu and Chukwuma set out for the forest. They walked side by side, but they did not speak to each other. They reached the edge of the forest and stopped. They looked at each other and nodded. They entered the forest and parted ways. Chukwuma walked deeper and deeper into the forest, following the tracks of the lion. He was not afraid of the lion. He was not afraid of anything. He had his spear and his knife and his courage. He was ready to face the lion and take its tooth. He was ready to win Ngozi and make her his wife. Ugochukwu the eldest walked deeper and deeper into the forest, avoiding the lion's tracks. He was afraid of the lion. He was afraid of everything. He had his spear and knife. He was a coward and he had a cunning plan. He was not ready to face the lion and take its tooth. He was not ready to win or suffer to make Ngozi his wife. Unknown to Chukwuma, his brother Ugochukwu had a different plan. He had planned to betray his brother, to kill him and cover his mess. Ugochukwu stopped at the middle of the forest and thought of how to accomplish his plan. He needed help. He knew that he could not face Chukwuma in a fair fight. He knew that he would lose. He needed someone who was stronger, faster, smarter, and braver than him. He needed someone who hated Chukwuma as much as he did. He needed someone who wanted Ngozi as much as he did. He came up with an idea. He needed Okoro. Okoro was the son of the village chief. He was a warrior, a hunter, and a leader. He was admired and respected by everyone in the village, except for Chukwuma. Chukwuma and Okoro were enemies, foes. They had competed for everything since they were boys, for glory, for honor, for power. They fought for everything since they were men, for land, for cattle, etc. They hated each other with passion. Ugochukwu decided to use his brother's enemy and accomplish his evil plan. Few moments later, he left the forest and ran to Okoro's hut. When he got to Okoro's hut, he briefed him quickly on what was going on. Okoro was full of joy and many thoughts went down his spine. Okoro had also wanted to marry Ngozi, but he had failed all the attempts. He had watched Ugochukwu and Chukwuma complete the first two challenges and advance to the third. Unknown to Ugochukwu, he is bringing death not only to his brother but to himself too. Okoro had cursed Ugochukwu and Chukwuma and wished them death. He had sworn to himself that he would not let them have Ngozi, that he would take her by force if he had to. Now is the opportunity he dreamed of. Like, he quietly whispered to himself that he would kill the both brothers. Okoro agreed to help Ugochukwu kill Chukwuma, his younger brother. Okoro pretended to be his friend and ally, but he was really his enemy and a traitor. He had his own plan. He had a plan to kill both Ugochukwu and Chukwuma and take the tooth of the lion. He had planned to present the teeth to the king and claim that he killed the lion himself. Few minutes later, they left the village. Ugochukwu and Okoro entered the forest together. Following Chukwuma's track, they had found him near the lion's den. Preparing to attack the lion, they hid behind the bush and waited for the right moment. They had seen Chukwuma charge at the lion with his spear, and the lion roared at him with its mouth. Immediately, they followed behind him and used swords to attack him on his neck. He fell down and quickly recognized his brother and friend. He screamed in pain for help, but they refused to stop. They stabbed him more time until he bleeded to death. Okoro, seeing that Chukwuma was dead, he reached for his knife and killed Ugochukwu immediately. He felt fulfilled. He took the tooth and left. But unfortunately for him, on his way out of the forest, a hungry lion rushed his flesh and devoured him. He died in the forest. The forest was silent. The only sound was the blood dripping from the knife, the tooth and the blood in the forest. At night, Ngozi waited for Chukwuma to return from the forest, but he never did. She had waited for Ugochukwu to return from the forest, but But he never did. The villagers gathered at the king's palace to know what was happening. They all waited for them to return from the forest, but none ever did. The princess became worried, anxious and restless. She had asked the king, her father, what had happened to the men. The king told her that they did not come back. They had probably died in the forest, that they had failed the challenge. He had told her she would have to marry someone else, someone who was still alive, someone who was worthy of her. Her father, the king, told her to choose a new suitor for herself while they await for their return. Someone who was rich and powerful, influential. The princess felt angry, sad and hopeless. She refused to marry someone else, someone who she did not love, someone who did not love her. She insisted on marrying Chukwuma, someone who she loved, someone who loved her. She had begged the king, her father, to let her go to the forest to find them, to bring him back, but the king denied her request. He locked her in her room and he guarded the door so that she wouldn't escape. She cried and screamed. She prayed. She then decided to take matters into her own hands. She escaped from her room. She stole a horse, a sword, and a clock. She went to the forest to the lion's den. When she got to a track road, she saw splashes of blood. She looked closer and she saw Okoro lying on the ground, covered in blood. She went further and found Chukwuma there. Lying next to him was his brother, covered in blood. She was shocked, and she used her power as a princess and realized that Ugochukwu and Okoro had killed Chukwuma and taken his suit. She wept bitterly. They all died for her hand, for her love. Out of anger and pain, she invoked the elements of the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars. She cursed Ugochukwu and Okoro. She had felt a surge of emotions, anger and revenge. She picked up the knife and the tooth and the clock. She wrapped Chukwuma's body on the cloth and tied his tooth around his neck. She mounted the horse and she left the forest and headed back to the village. When she reached the king's palace and entered the throne room, she saw the king, her father, sitting on the throne. She saw the new suitor, her fiancé, standing next to her. She saw the crowd, the people watching her. She said, "Father, I have returned from the forest. I have completed the challenge. I have brought back the tooth of the lion. I have also brought back the body of my husband. You caused it, Father. He's the only one who was worthy of me, the only one who I will marry, the only one who I will honor. He's the one who killed the lion. He's the one who died for me. He's the one whose brother betrayed, the one I will avenge for. He's the one whom I will join in death." Ngozi said this with tears rolling down her eyes. Then she placed the second irreversible curse upon Ugochukwu and his generations, and she stabbed herself in the heart with the same knife and fell to the ground next to Chukwuma's body. She died. The throne room was silent. The king rushed her body to revive her, but it was too late. "My son Obinna, that was what happened, and the mark of this deadly curse is following you and will continue to follow you, causing pain until something is done, and I don't have a solution to that." After Obinna heard all these painful past events, he fainted before Chief. He was rushed to the hospital. Obinna was revived in the hospital. Tears rolled down his chest. He remembered all he went through looking for solution to his predicament, how his first wife was mocked severally, how he was pushed to marry the second wife, thinking the first wife was barren. He could not control his tears. Everything seemed like a fairy tale. Few hours later, his wife arrives to the hospital to know what happened to him and why he was admitted. Obinna refused to disclose anything to them. He was later discharged and he went home. The next day, he returned to see the chief. This time around, he went with his closest friend, Emma. They approached the chief and pleaded on what next to do in order to break free from this generational curse. The old man told them nothing. There is nothing he could do, and they left the village. Emma suggested to Obinna he should involve another strong man of God. Let him carry out a family liberation in their family. Obinna accepted the idea. Obinna got home and his wives were already mad at him. Why he is behaving and acting strange. Why he refused to tell them anything. At night, the second wife urged Obinna to talk to her, or else she would pack her things and go. She pressurized Obinna to speak, or she would leave the marriage. The next day, Obinna had a little meeting and he told his wives what was going on. He begged them to forgive him and also assured them to get solution. They wept bitterly and couldn't bear it anymore. The second wife packed her bag and left Obinna's house. Obinna was heartbroken, but few hours later, his friend Emma connected him to a strong prophet who would conduct the family liberation. The prophet fixed a date with him, and Obinna was happy that at last solution is here. Obinna strived hard to buy all the things the prophet demanded. They all waited for the due day. 7 days later, the prophet arrived with his team. He conducted a family deliverance in Obinna's compound and he denounced the curse, sprinkled water and olive oil all over the place. He performed a lot of aerobatic activities, which he told Obinna is what will erase the curse. From morning till dawn, he was into this activity. Later, the prophet was through and everyone dismissed to their various destinations. Obinna was happy. He went in with his wife. Months passed, he didn't see any sign of pregnancy. He took his wife to the hospital and she tested negative. Obinna was disappointed and in fact, he felt death should just come and take him. He felt the prophet couldn't deliver him from the curse. Meanwhile, Obinna's wife, NNEKa, became more sad. She thought of what next to do. She visited her grandmother in the village of Ojugo. She told her all she was going through in her marriage and how she had remained childless for years. Her grandmother felt a pang of pity on her. And at night, she took her to the powerful native doctor called Idika. The native doctor gave them instruction and told them what to do to appease the spirit of Ngozi the princess and the innocent Chukwuma who was murdered. He told them not to leave any stone untouched so as to get their complete liberation. NNEKa and her grandmother left the shrine. She felt a bit relief. She thanked her grandmother and returned home to her husband. She explained everything the great Idika told them. Obinna did not give her a listening ear. He was already fed up. She convinced him to listen to the native doctor and heed to his instruction. Maybe this could be our last bus stop. I could feel something positive, she said to her husband. Idika, the great native doctor, instructed Obinna to perform a native ritual and cleansing in their community and the compound. He told Obinna's wife that the land was desecrated by Ugochukwu and Okafor, and nothing could erase the curse unless he performed the mentioned rituals. Obinna was adamant and he refused to listen to what the native doctor told his wife. He wasn't satisfied and he needed to be convinced that after performing the rituals, his situation will stop. Days later, Obinna invited his friend Emma to disclose what his wife told him. He discussed exclusively with Emma and they came up with an idea. Emma suggested to Obinna he should go see the native doctor and be sure things will get better after performing the rituals. Obinna was cool with that and right away he fixed a date with his wife to go see Idika, the native doctor. 2 nights later, Obinna and NNEKa journeyed down to Ojugo to Idika's shrine to meet him. Idika told Obinna that Ugochukwu committed abomination against mortals and immortals, and the gods are angry. He instructed Obinna that he must perform 3 rituals according to the instruction of the gods, and upon completion of the ritual, the curse will be ineffective and his wife would conceive. Idika further told Obinna, here is the message from the gods. The first assignment, Obinna must travel down to his village, to the king's palace, and apologize to the king and the entire community for the past atrocities committed by his ancestors and Okafor. Second assignment, he must lay on Princess Ngozi's grave for 2 nights by making sure his tears drop on the surface of the grave as he cried for mercy. The third assignment, he must mold the image of Chukwuma and the princess at their village entrance for eternal remembrance. And lastly, the fourth assignment, Obinna must gather all the village children below the age of 15 and perform a candle night procession for the late Chukwuma and Princess Ngozi. Obinna was also instructed to buy some native item from the candle night procession. Right in front of Idika, Obinna became angry and confused. Therefore, he questioned the native doctor. He asked him what if nothing happens afterward. Idika smiled and told him not to question the authorities of the gods. He who harvested the ant-infested firewood should be ready to feast with the lizard, Idika said with anger. The great Idika warned Obinna he must not miss any instruction, else his situation will increase. He must give them honor and peace that belongs to the immortals, else no prayer can save him and his household. Obinna wasn't satisfied, but he accepted and they left the shrine. 5 days later, Obinna is yet to carry out the first assignment. He wasn't making any efforts either. Everything he was told faded in deaf ears. He kept questioning God Almighty on why he allowed them to suffer after his endless dedication to the things of God. He kept questioning his faith in God and why he refused to set them free. He kept asking himself questions beyond his mere understanding. His wife, NNEKa, became worried and mad at him while he was reluctant to do the needful things. He started going anti-clock. Right now, their business stopped moving forward. NNEKa didn't find it funny anymore, and she threatened to leave Obinna if he refused to implement what Idika instructed them to do. After much deliberation, Obinna decided to commence his assignments. She further opened his eyes to the realities of life. NNEKa said, "My husband, stop forgetting that you must give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God Almighty what belongs to him. The truth remains that we cannot run away from our foundation, and right now you have a big faulty foundation. Strive to correct them to avoid your generation facing the consequences of past atrocities." NNEKa said this to her husband. Obinna was brought back to his senses. He decided to act upon what Idika gave him. He first went to the market and bought all the necessary native items and the white garments. He made sure he didn't miss anything. Ima was eagerly helpful in assisting Obinna. All the vital materials was bought and Obinna set to travel to their village the next morning. But Obinna got a call from his workers that he should rush down to his shop, that his shop caught fire and everything are on flame. Obinna quickly jumped into his car and left his house, but something terrible happened. You see, Obinna was supposed to go for the rituals, but he was traumatized on hearing that his shop caught fire. He quickly rushed to his car to go attend to his shop, but unfortunately for him, he oversped and ran into a moving trailer. His car was smashed and people gathered to rescue him. Obinna was rushed to the nearby hospital, but his condition was critical. He was transferred to another hospital. Few hours later, NNEKa heard the news of her husband being hospitalized stabilized. She quickly rushed to the hospital and Obinna was confirmed of being in coma. Before he was brought to the hospital, Nneka screamed and held Obinna's hands and cried unto God to save his life. Weeks later, Obinna was still in coma. Nneka decided to revisit the native doctor. She got to Idika's shrine and explained to him what was happening and how things had gone from bad to worse. Idika did some incantation. He told Nneka that the angry spirit of Ngozi is behind their misfortune. He warned Nneka that Obinna must act fast, else more deadly situation will occur. He promised to revive Obinna. Idika gave Nneka some herbs and a necklace to give to Obinna. He assured her that he would be restored in 3 days' time. After taking the herbs, Nneka felt a little relieved and she thanked the great Idika and she left the shrine. The next day, Nneka rushed to the hospital and put the necklace across Obinna's neck. She did some incantation and infused the herbs in Obinna's mouth. After 72 hours, Obinna was restored from the coma. Everything happened like magic. Few days later, Obinna started responding to treatment. Nneka was happy, at least there is hope and he's okay. But the only challenge they were facing is not being able to pay the hospital bills and feed well because his source of income just caught fire. Ima assisted Obinna in paying most of his hospital bills and doctor promised to discharge him. Not quite long, Obinna was discharged, though he had bandage across his neck. He got home and everyone happily welcomed Obinna. They thanked God he didn't lose his life. 2 weeks later, Obinna and Nneka commenced their journey to the village. They went straight to the palace with Ima and some other persons to plead with the villagers. Everyone was astonished, though not happy, as everything reminded them of the past events. Obinna was shown where the princess and Chukwuma was buried. He did everything the great native doctor instructed them, and he equally molded the image of princess and Chukwuma. The villagers was happy with him. On their last day of the ritual, Idika, the great native doctor, came to their village and told Obinna to make love to his wife. He applauded Obinna for accomplishing his task and setting his family free. He told Obinna indeed he's a warrior and history will never forget him. And lastly, Idika told Obinna not to fail what he told him, like he should make sure he'd sleep with his wife this night, else his lineage will close. Idika spoke to him in parables, telling Obinna, "Farewell, my son. You are the sacrificial lamb whose blood will be used to liberate your family." He told Obinna, "You must make love to your wife tonight. Do not fail." Obinna was nervous and shocked. He tried to understand why he must make love to his wife. Why not allow them return to the city? The meaning of the proverb Idika dropped was weird to him, and he did everything to make Idika talk more on what he meant, but all to no avail. Meanwhile, Idika refused to elaborate anything to him. He took the necklace of protection Obinna was wearing. He took it back from him without explaining anything to Obinna. He returned back to his shrine after delivering his message. Obinna was lost in thought, but Nneka, his wife, was not worried because she thought something positive is coming, but she did not pay attention to the words of Idika. At night, Obinna did as he was instructed. He met his wife and they had a passionate lovemaking. They were both happy and satisfied. The next day, they were supposed to travel back to the city together, but Obinna suddenly developed a cold body and told Nneka to go back, that he would join them later. Nneka, on the other side, was having some strange feelings and unease mindset, but she couldn't figure out the cause. Nneka objected her husband's suggestion and refused to go back without Obinna. She told Obinna that she's having some strange feelings, but Obinna convinced her that everything is fine. Nneka later accepted, unknown to her, is the last time she would set her eyes on Obinna alive. Who would have told her that Obinna, her lovely husband, was going to die? Hours later, Nneka said to return back. Obinna kissed her and told her to take care of herself. He told her that he will return the next day. He told her not to worry about anything, that everything is fine now. She joined others and they returned to the city. She wasn't satisfied and wasn't happy. She just obeyed her husband. Obinna wasn't worried at all. His mindset was to rest more and relax in the village instead of rushing back. Unknown to Obinna, that will be his last day on earth. He bid his wife goodbye and she returned to the city. When Nneka got home, she called Obinna and told him, "Honey, we arrived safely." And Obinna was happy and they spoke at length over the phone. Obinna also called Emma and thanked him for his endless support. At night, everyone retired to the bed. The next day, it was noon, and Obinna haven't called to talk to his wife or discuss his coming back with her. She wasn't really comfortable and decided to call Obinna. She called severally and no one responded. This was unlike him. Obinna won't see his wife's call and wouldn't return the call back. Nneka didn't find it funny, so she called Emma to inquire if Obinna had called him since morning. But he said no, she wasn't really comfortable with his response, and she told Emma to help her and call him. Emma called Obinna, but no response. Nneka became more worried. She called a neighbor in the village, but they said they last saw Obinna hours ago and haven't seen him again. Nneka was confused on what to do, if she should go back to the village or wait more. She waited throughout the day and no calls from Obinna. The next day, she went back to the village, but their compound gate was locked from inside and no means of entrance. She alerted the villagers and they forced the gates open. Nneka got to their room and met the lifeless body of Obinna on their matrimonial bed. She couldn't believe what she saw. What could have transpired? She screamed and everybody gathered. They held Nneka and consoled her. Nneka refused to listen to them. She told them to invite Idika, the great native doctor. She refused to allow them carry Obinna's body away. Two youths was sent to Idika's shrine. Idika didn't waste time. He quickly arrived in Obinna's compound. He nodded his head and said, "When a finger dips into a red oil, it spread wide to other fingers. The ways of the gods is different from the ways of mortals." Ugochukwu did not only attract curse to the family, he also brought the anger of the gods upon the land. There are things beyond our mere understanding. There are forces beyond our control. Forces that can affect our lives in mysterious ways. Sometimes these forces are benevolent and sometimes these forces are malevolent. Sometimes they are natural and sometimes they are supernatural. Sometimes they are visible and sometimes they are invisible. Sometimes they are merciful and sometimes they are unmerciful. Idika went further and said, "Of course, Obinna accomplished his task, but human blood was needed to seal the ritual and erase the curse completely. Because human blood was used to lay the curse, Princess Ngodi placed a curse with her blood, and Obinna is the only survivor. Therefore, he was the sacrificial lamb. These are mysteries you all won't understand. Dear humans, today I'm dishing out street warnings. Whatever you do, keep your hands clean and avoid shedding blood. The repercussion goes down to your unborn generations. If not averted, Obinna is a hero. No one should cry for him because he will reincarnate at the right time. He must be buried before dawn. I have delivered the message from the gods. I beg to take my leave," Idika said and left. After he had addressed The villagers gathered in Obinna's compound. He returned back to his shrine. Nneka cried very well. She watched them wrap her husband's body and buried him beside their compound. She stayed back at the village to mourn her husband for a month and 2 days. She later returned to the city. When she got back to the city, few weeks later, things became better. She vowed not to remarry because she truly loved her late husband, Obinna. A week later, Nneka felt sick. She was seriously sick and had to go to the hospital. The doctor examined her and confirmed she was pregnant and may likely deliver twins. Nneka was full of joy. She wished Obinna was alive to witness the good news after many years of having two barren wives. 9 months later, Nneka delivered a set of triplets, 2 boys and 1 girl. The villagers was informed and they joyfully came to the city to accord the babies respectfully. They made merriment and blessed the kids and Nneka. The arrival of the kids opened more doors to them. Emma offered to sponsor another standard business for Nneka, their mother. Gifts was rolling in and visitors was coming in tons. Everyone was happy and thanked God that at last the cry of a baby was heard in their home. The moral lesson of this story: I am opening a ground for you to tell me what you learned from this story. Kindly drop a comment, and if you enjoyed our story, please hit the like button, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this to your friends and loved ones. See you in the next epic stories. Bye.